Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out and joining us today. Happy Friday to everybody. So I think this is a great way to start off the weekend. Just a few things. We ask that all attendees keep themselves on mute while we go through a little bit of a Q&A that we'll have with the team from Krug. Anna Christina from the Morrell Wine Bar is here, and she's going to help me lead this discussion today. But we definitely want to field your questions. So if you have questions, feel free to use the chat side. We'll be manning that and helping to pose those into it. And then later on, towards the end, we'll open it up for a Q&A with you all directly. So once again, we thank you for coming out and joining us. And it's a great way to ease into a lovely weekend. And with that, I just want to thank the team from Krug for making it happen. Obviously, we have Olivier Krug from the Krug family here with us today, but we also have some supporters behind the scenes, including Renaud Boutel, who's the International Director for Krug. Renaud, how are you? How are you doing?
I am doing very well, Jeremy. I can tell you I would love to be in the US right now, but very happy to spend this time with you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to say a few words to everyone. Obviously, thank you for taking the time. You all know that we are currently semi-confined in France, and the opportunity for us to travel virtually with all of you is just so energizing. So thank you for spending some time with us. Jeremy, thank you for organizing this event, because you are a Krug Ambassade and you are a member of our family, and it's important for us to spend time with you. So I won't take more time, because you will hear a lot about a dream. You will hear a lot about obsessions and convictions we have at Krug, and passions, many passions. We're very passionate, but most importantly, I want you to hear Olivier. So thank you for giving me some time for the introduction, Jeremy, and back to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's great to see you. Olivier, how are you, my friend? How are things in Champagne?
Can I say that I am very good today? I am very good today because I think you saw my screen and you understood that I was back home because It's Friday night, but I spent the afternoon here in that room in my back.
Okay. And I'm assuming if you spent the afternoon there, that meant you had an important tasting or something to plan today.
I had my first day back at Krug, and strange enough, besides the guard at the gate, I was the only one in the whole building all day. I brought a sandwich this morning, spent a full day in the house where I grew up alone. And that was a bit special, to be honest. And I am red, not because I drank all day, but because I started back yesterday. And for those of you who follow my Instagram, you know that I spent the day yesterday in the vineyard, because my first day back home was of course, to see the growers with whom I haven't had a personal contact for more than 2 months.
Wow. Wow. And I mean, how eerie was it being alone in Krug? I mean, were you talking to Joseph's ghost? I mean, how eerie was it?
Actually, yes, I was. I was. No, I will tell you. I had a Zoom session in Australia this midday today, and in Australia they haven't received the 168th edition yet. So this morning I came with my bottle of 168th edition, but I was told 30 minutes before that I had to open a bottle of 167th edition, and I could not find one. I could not find a bottle in these buildings until I called Julie Mures, for those who know Julie Mures, and I found the very last bottle in the walls. It was delicious, by the way.
I love 167. It's really good. So obviously there's been some changes. You haven't actually been able to be in the cellars. The team is spread out. I mean, How has this situation impacted the lives at Krug? Has it had a very serious impact to actually producing the champagne and having things done?
Yeah, at first we took things extremely seriously. Renaud and myself, we were supposed to fly, and we were so excited, no need to explain, to fly to Australia 5-6 days before the shutdown. And in fact, this was the day when we asked our own people to stay home, to go back home with their computer and to put themselves at safe. And so we closed everything 8 weeks ago, I think now. Everyone went back home, but the people working in the vineyard. So it's easy in a way to work in the vineyard because you can take your own car. You ensure that you work 5 meters from each other. You don't have lunch together. And we've been spoiled by the weather because we had a rain twice 2 hours in 8 weeks. So it was good for the vineyard people. As far as winemaking is concerned, that was very special. And I will, you know me, I will steal 3 minutes of your time to tell you the story. This year is very special, not for me, but for Julie Caville. And those of you who don't know Julie Caville is a cellar master at Krug. So I see some faces. What? Julie? Who is this Julie? A woman at Krug? Who is she? What happened? So let me tell you about Julie Caville, because Julie Caville joined Krug a few days ago to prepare to be the next chef de cave. So that was 13 years ago, because everything at Krug takes such a long time. So 13 years ago, she was hired by Eric Lebel, of course, not to become chef de cave, but to be part of this testing committee. And over the time, she has proven that she could become the next one, which she became last Jan. So very exciting. And you can imagine that blending Krug Grand Cuvée for the first time is something which is, I believe, quite special when you are chef de cave at Krug. And she had to do the job from home. So at Krug, and you ask me a question later if you want, but you've probably heard about what we call the Black Book, which used to be an actual big, heavy black book in which the cellar master was taking notes of all the tastings we are doing, something like 4,000 tasting notes every year. And then the tasting, the chef de cave was going to on his desk, spending like 2 weeks reading all the notes to recreate the dream of Joseph Krug. For the last 3-4 years, we've been taking these notes on an iPad. So we've built our own appli for the testing. And that was fun in a way, because when we felt we would have to close, we spent the last 2 days testing to make sure that the few dozens, almost 100 testing we hadn't done would be done before the close down. And the day we closed the gate, we almost jumped out of the office with the iPad in hand, and we all had the black book with us. So we went back home, and Julie spent the first 10 days from home as a chef de cave. Her new job as a team leader was to lead the tasting committee through Zoom meetings to recreate the blend. And when we recreate the blend, the first part of the process is to put it on the paper, like an architecture. And then they all went to Krug for three days in 3 different tasting rooms with gloves, masks, everything. They created the blend. They invited me the last day. So this was almost the only activity for the winemaking in April. In May, we had a team who came, 6 workers, to actually blend. And what is blending? Blending is just following the list of wines decided by Julie, 190 something wines. And you go to all these small vats, you put a pipe and you pump everything into a big vat, and that eventually become the next Grand Cuvée.
So how many people are involved in the tasting to create the blend of Grand Cuvée?
The tasting committee is led by the chef de cave, because someone has to take the decision. Someone has to say, this is where we go. And this is a big and interesting responsibility, because as you know, there is no recipe. there is not even a factual benchmark, because what we are aiming for is the fullest expression of champagne. So it's not like a champagne that tastes fresh or rich or spicy, or no, it's about everything. So you have the chef de cave, and the chef de cave is surrounded by 5 winemakers, ranging from Eric Lebel, the previous chef de cave, who is 56 or 7, and Isabelle, with whom I spoke this afternoon, who is 25. So we have the full range. We have 3 ladies, 3 boys, plus myself and Maggie when we are not traveling. And myself, I like to call myself, not because of my age, of course, but I like to call myself the most senior member of the tasting committee, because I joined it more than 30 years ago when my dad was leading the tasting, and when my grandfather was still coming. So I have the biggest expertise, despite I am not a winemaker, and I will never claim that it's my baby and my creation. So 6 to 8 people.
Great. So the current edition is the 168. So can you touch on the 168 and also the importance of Grand Cuvée for the house? Because
at first I need a little reminder.
You need a little reminder? Nice.
Oh my God.
That you could find easily, not the 167.
Oh, no, that's the 168. I'm not cheating. This is a real one. I'll show you. You know, this is the real one. And Grand Cuvée is Krug, and Krug is Grand Cuvée. And to understand Krug, at first, people have to quit what they learned from the rest of Champagne. Champagne is usually structured between 2 main qualities in theory. One is vintage. So vintage is about these good years when you get the best grapes from the best villages, usually Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And you have non-vintages where the quality is more about consistency, but not about extraordinary. And the dream, what I call the dream of Joseph Krug, my ancestor, was to offer the very best every year. And of course, everyone told him, you have no chance, because the very best comes from a single year, a better year. And he said, I don't agree with this idea, because I owe people who trust my name, I owe them the very best quality every year. Therefore, I'm going to invent a champagne that offers the best every year. It was fun. We have this letter from his wife who said, you cannot let your family down for a dream. This will not work. Not only it worked because he found a way to create this champagne, but we have done it 168 times in a row. So this is the story. So when people ask me, what is 168th edition? I say this is the 168th time in a row that we have recreated the dream of Joseph Krug. So how do you overcome the challenges of vintages when you don't have a good year every year? When, if by chance you have 2 or 3 good years in a row, they don't give the same, because a year might give richness and concentration. A year might give elegance. The next one might be about spices. The following one might be a bit boring. How do you make that? So you have to put yourself in a position where you have a chance to find not the best. This is not a word we use so much at Krug, but you have to find the broadest scope of individualities every year, to make sure that every year in front of you, you have people with the most precise, the most intense, and the most different from each other personality. So how do you do that? In Champagne, most people think that Champagne is just this small region and you have to pick between 3 types of grapes, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Meunier, and you add more Chardonnay if you want more elegance, more Pinot if you want more richness. But this is not like this. And I know I see so many nice faces that I know you know your wines. And this is exactly as what you find in Burgundy. You have in Champagne, you have more than 300 villages. In these villages, you find 17,000 growers. There are in this small region, 17,000 people who grow grapes. And these people, they manage 280,000 small plots, sometimes the size of your living room. So you don't do a lot from the size of your living room. But in Champagne, there are 280,000 different plots. And all of them are different for all the good reasons, you know. And Joseph, he said, you know, every year I get my supply from 250 plots. I put Chardonnay on one side, Meunier in the middle, Pinot Noir. I should vinify separately each of these plots if they are different. And this is what he started to do. This is actually what he wrote in this small diary. Don't laugh, but actually I brought it to Krug today and I closed it and I cannot open it tonight. So it's blocked. I need a key because there is a safety. So I won't show you the diary today. Jamie, I see your face. You look very, very upset that I missed the diary. Maybe we have the diary on this picture. So this is Joseph. No, we don't.
And this is Joseph here, right?
Yeah, he said very clearly, one cannot make a good wine without using good elements from good origin. So he was very precise. And to make that long story short, in a good year, if you vinify plot by plot, you will probably have 250 outstanding wines in front of you. And you don't need all of them. So that gives you a chance to put some of them aside and keep them for future years. This is what we call reserve wines. In a more challenging year, not all the wines will be dull or bad. You always have great wines. Even in the worst possible years, you know from other regions, there is always a plot, there is always someone somewhere who still makes great wines. If you vinify everything together, you won't find this. If you vinify individually, you'll be in a position to get to pick those who still made great individualities in those years, and you will eliminate the others. So even in difficult years at Krug, we are in a position to identify some players that we want to have on board, and those who are missing, we call them back from the past. And this was a very, very, very clear vision of Joseph. So he said, if I can put myself in a position to have the broadest choice of individualities every year, if I can put some of them aside, in few years, I'll be in a position to create a champagne whose quality will be unquestionable every year. And even more interesting, and I'm going to shock some of you, but even more interesting than a vintage, I will have a champagne that will offer everything that champagne can offer. So Krug Grand Cuvée is not about richness. It is not about precision. It is not about spices. It is not about being long. It is not about being fresh. It's about being everything. And sometimes I do similar tastings with people who know Krug, don't know Krug as well as you do. And it's fun to ask everyone to give one word. By the way, maybe one day we should do it on Zoom. We should ask everyone to put one word. And you will see, if you taste a vintage champagne, you know, if it is a rich year, all the words will be within the rich expression, if it is, etc. For Grand Cuvée, you will see all the words you could put on a mapping. And that was the dream of Joseph, to have this champagne that gives you, you know my word, sometimes I talk about this explosion of flavors, a firework of aromas. And this is Grand Cuvée.
So that brings us back to 168.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the 168. It's based on 2012, and it literally just hit the US market within the past month and a half, but it was sitting here resting for at least 6 months before it was released, if I have my facts right.
Yes, exactly. So you probably, for those who don't know, on the back of each of your bottle of Krug, you have this little number. Maybe I could bring you back home, and this will be more real, unfortunately. But easier for you to follow me. If you have this, your bottle of Grand Cuvée, on the back side of your bottle of Grand Cuvée, and Louis is helping me on the side, you have this little number, which we call the Krug ID. The Krug ID is the story of your bottle. Mine says 119007. So what can I do with this ID? Whether I Google the number, whether I have downloaded the Krug appli, which by the way is free. So this is a chance for you. This is the only thing free at Krug. So do not hesitate to download as many times as you want. And if you have the Krug appli, if you enter this 6 digits number, you will get the story of your bottle. So you will see how many wines you have, when it was made, etc., etc. 119 means this bottle received the cork the first trimester of 2019. This is a bit geeky, but I know some of you love these details. 119, so it received the cork 15 months ago. And this is to confirm what you just said, Jeremy. So we like to have a long, still a good aging between disgorgement and the moment it reaches your glass, because the champagne needs this little bit of serenity to finish this long work. So this edition, 168th edition, is a Grand Cuvée we recreated after the harvest 2012. 2012 was one of these years that we get more and more. A year when you have no clue what tomorrow will be in terms of climate. You know, now I think you need a double seat belt on your chair when you produce wine in some regions in France. We have no clue what the weather will be, no clue. And this is what happened in 2012. But for sure, what we all remember was the end of the summer, one of the hottest ever. This is maybe what we say every year now, but it was so hot. And the quality, it was a small harvest because of the troubles we had at the beginning, but the quality of what we had was spectacular. Spectacular. It was so rich, so dense, so deep. I mean, honestly, a little bit like 2002. You know, this year when you taste the still wines, and all of them have some statements to give you. You know, very, very, very clear. And a lot of my colleagues, they even posted or gave interviews during the harvest saying that it was the best harvest for decades, the new 47, and of course, we all remember 47. So this is an information that helps for sure. But you know, everyone was talking about that. So
sorry, I've not had 47 Krug. I couldn't tell you.
I knew that. I knew that. I knew that. But 47, very ripe. Anyway, when people ask Eric Lebel, who was then the chef de cave, Eric, how did you? I believe you had a easy job of blending this 168th edition after such a good year. And Eric said, not at all. Not at all, but it was great. Say, no, I had a management issue. But what was your issue? I had to manage the egos. What do you mean? The 250 wines wanted to join the blend. And Krug Grand Cuvée is not about the first in class. Krug Grand Cuvée is about everything. So we cannot have everyone with muscles. And this is where the dream of Joseph Krug takes all its sense, because the dream of Joseph was to offer everything. So in 2012, we had all the, what I would call vintage characteristics, you know, like boom, in your face, very clear, big, bold, rich, fruity, charismatic. But we were missing charm, elegance, freshness, length, spices. You know, it's like in an orchestra when you say, I have all the best instruments, but I need this ding-ding or puet-puet from the fanfare. So this is where the dream takes all its sense, because you go back to the reserve and you bring from previous years what 2012 did not offer. And we went back to 11 different years. And since you like details, when we go back to a year, we don't go back to a single wine. We went back to wines coming from 11 different years. So in some of the years, we grabbed 12 wines. In some, we got only one. I will talk only about one. I will talk about the oldest one, because this is a year that you all remember. The oldest wine in this blend here is 1996. And you all remember that 96 was a superlative vintage because of this backbone of freshness and acidity and potential. So in 2012, despite a superlative vintage on the paper, we needed to go back as far as 96 to bring the freshness, the excitement that allows Grand Cuvée to offer everything. And I love talking about that story.
So can I extrapolate from that with global warming, champagne temperatures are changing, the seasons, the hail, the fact of Grand Cuvée and the art of blending and using reserve wines will mitigate those changes in the future, so you can always have that freshness. Will the art of blending help stave off the changes to from the environment?
Yes, for sure. I have no survey, and for 1 second, I will not talk about me. I will talk about other great champagnes, vintages. My gut feeling is that you will see more rich, full body, charismatic vintages in the future, because they talk only about 1 year. For Grand Cuvée, I will say yes and yes. And why 2 yes? Because we have a competitive advantage. I will not say we are ready, despite I believe we are, but we've been ready for a while because we go plot by plot. If I buy 2 plots from a grower who has 20 plots, this grower will have probably, because his plots are probably in the same area, will have heterogeneity in quality, even in a good year, because you cannot harvest everything on best day. If this guy or lady offers or sells 2 plots to Krug, since these 2 plots are the only plots which are dedicated to the house, he or she will choose the day these 2 plots are harvested. So within the 20 plots, I have my feeling tells me, and at least what I tested made me happy, but my feeling tells me that the plots dedicated to Krug are the 2 plots for which the date of harvest has been the most precisely chosen. And at Krug, we love freshness, because, as you know, we have champagnes that we age a very long time before release. And some of you know very well that even after release, you can keep your bottle of Krug 10, 20, 30 years. So we love freshness. We need this kind of purity and precision. The intensity will come from the fruit, from the ripeness, from the aging. And we even sometimes incentivate our growers to start before official dates. When we taste the grapes and when we feel they are ready, when a grower says on Thursday, this will be even richer on Monday next week, say, yes, but why don't you start tomorrow? Say, because it's a weekend and I need to pay my staff twice during the weekend. And I'm not going to start just because Krug wants to start. So when you are stuck into this kind of deal, which is a classic deal, honestly, you have no other choice than waiting for Monday, and you probably harvest beautiful grapes with lots of ripeness, but you may lose this little chick that makes Krug lively and precise. In those cases, we might even offer the grower to pick for him, and we will pay him, so he doesn't lose money for his staff or whatever. But we want the grapes when they are ready. And I'm spending a lot of time on this part of Krug, because this is the key to understand Krug. Krug is all about this individuality, this precise relationship, and that's it. Yesterday, I went to a village called Villers-Marmerie, and no shame at all, for sure. At least half of you do not know Villers-Marmerie. This is one of the 3-4 darlings villages of Krug. This is the only village in Champagne where we go to 4 different families. The guy with whom I was yesterday, last year, he provided us with 17 different wines from a small domain. 17. He loves precision so much that he has a 2,000 kilograms press. I don't know if you know about pressing, but usually a press is 4,000, 8 or 12. This guy, he had a 2,000 press, like if he was cooking all your dishes one by one. This is the guy. Last year, this man who is working on his own with his 2 sons, he took 17 different decisions of harvest and picking for Krug. We made 17 wines, which we tested twice. So we tested 34 samples times 6 people. So only for his own wine, he received more than 200 tasting notes. This little guy in Villers-Marmerie. That's one example. And that's what we are doing everywhere. Why am I talking about that? Because this is an answer to the challenges of climate change, because we follow very, very, very precisely the vineyard. I know some of you have seen my pictures yesterday in the vineyard, and you said, Olivier, are you harvesting already in May? I said, no, of course. But what are you doing in the vineyard in May? Is it flowering? No, it's not even flower, despite there are few flowers already in the field. But what are you doing? We are talking about with the people, how should I prune this year? What am I doing, etc. And I'm going to keep the mic because yesterday was fascinating. This grower is called Thierry, and some of you know him because he's one of my beloved growers. He's not the guy you put on stage. He's a bit rough. Yeah, that's the word. But such a great man. I love him so much. I go to football games with him. So that is to tell you how much we trust each other. And Thierry, he's 60 something. So he's about to retire. He's been doing that for more than 40 years. He was working in the vineyard when he was a boy with his grand, it's done. He had enough. And last year, Thierry was the first one to raise his hand when we proposed something to our growers. We, as you can imagine, a house like Krug takes social responsibility and sustainability very seriously. We are a leader, we have to lead that. So we have certification, etc. But we produce only 20–25% of the grapes we need. So why being sustainable, super precise, super qualitative when you buy grapes from people who might not be? Or maybe they are, but you cannot prove if some of you challenge me. So we told our growers, we say, if you agree to join a program of sustainability, a certification, not a serious certification, not a program. If you join a certification of sustainability, you can have a bonus and that will help because global warming, etc., etc., etc. We were expecting most of them to kind of hide. They all raised their hand. And this Thierry, despite he's old in his career, it's done. He was the first one to raise hand. And he changed everything he was doing in the vineyard. On year 1, he went through the audit and he got the certification. And I love this story because, again, this is an answer to your question for the future. And he said, I don't need to do that. Maybe I will be selling my grapes, my company. I'm not sure my son will take over, but for sure what I will be selling something which is at the level of Krug. And he doesn't need to do that because he could sell his grapes anyway. That's where we are going with our growers. Again, one example, Thierry in Villers-Marmerie, 3 hectares. And that's the way we are working. So we are putting ourselves in shoes that will hopefully help us to be ready for the future challenges. Besides that, Julie Caville, I mentioned Julie before, she became chef de cave, so we've done a few interviews together, and she only has one joke, which is always the same, Renaud, when people ask her, what are you going to change? And she says, everything. And then she said, of course, no, I'm not going to change what Joseph Krug had in mind. but I have more ideas. And she had a big plan, maybe it's secret, but it is family, it's Friday night, I can share with you. She has a big plan, which has been approved, which is called Joseph 2.0. Joseph is our Joseph. So this is the new Joseph. So what will be the Krug? And she just arrived, so she just started. What will be the Krug we leave to the next generation, the next people who will be working? How can we ensure that we are sustainable? How can we ensure that we keep our quality, that we still have precision, that we deserve the beautiful growers who sell their grapes to the house of Krug, etc., etc. So we are very, very, very much into all that process.
It's fascinating. I mean, you guys do so much to create this harmony and this consistency with the Grand Cuvée, and I know it is not an easy feat to do. But people have also asked us lots of questions over the years, and I received several emails prior to this to talk about also the vintage Krug and how important the vintage Krug is to the house. And obviously with that, then there are the single vineyard expressions as well as the late release expressions. So could you touch on vintage Krug? 2006 was released late last year, and is, you know, the current vintage on the market, and frankly it's still just an infant. So can you touch a little bit on that?
Yes, I will. When Joseph started, he had two champagne in mind. I only talked about Grand Cuvée, but he said beside Grand Cuvée, in some years, if you can, you will create a champagne number 2 as good as Grand Cuvée, which by the way is very interesting for those of you who think that the benchmark should be the vintage. He said, you know, my benchmark, my ideal champagne will be Grand Cuvée. In some years, you can eventually aim for a champagne as good as Grand Cuvée, as far as it tells the story of the year. So when we make a vintage at Krug, like 2006, the idea is not to make a better champagne, it is to make a champagne that will tell the story of the year. 2006 is the last one, and it is a typical vintage of our generation, if I may say. We call it a capricious indulgence, because it started with the most extreme heat during 3 weeks, dry, hot in July, followed by extreme rain, over and disease, etc. in August. So in few weeks, in 4 or 5 weeks, we had the two most extreme climate next to each other. And that was not spring, that was at the time when the fruit were getting their quality. Finally, it ended very, very well. And this is a champagne where you can feel this generosity, these tensions, etc., etc. So this is the story of the year. What I love doing when I have the chance is to have a small vertical tasting, 2006 next to 2004, 3, 2, for example, because they all have a different story. It took 140 years until my dad, Henri, in the early 80s, released a rosé. And that was a time when Krug was not so much at ease with the idea of a rosé, because my dad said, if I want to make a rosé, I will maybe add richness, and if I add richness to this beautiful Grand Cuvée, I may fall into something too excessive, and maybe I will depend on the quality of the red wines, and because of the vintages, you know, red wines are very different, etc. So he worked a lot at creating something that could be the equivalent of Grand Cuvée in the world of rosé. So rosé will never be a vintage. Rosé is rosé. It is not the story of a year. It is the story of Krug rosé. And as some of you do, my father was in love with Pinot Noir. And as you may know, Pinot Noir is the main grape variety at Krug. He was in love with Pinot Noir. So he decided to underline, enhance the qualities of Pinot Noir, which are not muscles, but Pinot Noir is about charm, elegance, silkiness, etc. So this is what he created, a beautiful champagne. We haven't made it every year so far because we are between the 23rd and 24th edition or 22nd, depending on the market. So we are around the 23rd edition of Grand Cuvée of Krug Rosé at the moment. And besides this Krug Rosé, my father had an idea, an intuition, I would say. And this I see is in your back. Beautiful, beautiful Friday evening in Le Mesnil-sur-Oger, by the way, Jeremy.
Yes, it is. It's much better than sitting in Brooklyn, that's for sure.
And it looks beautiful. You've done a great work this week. You deserve a beer now. No, sorry, a glass of Krug. And this is Clos du Mesnil. And in 1971, we had the acquisition of a little domain in this village, including this plot. But most of the grapes the vineyard we bought are, oh, great picture, are on the other side of the hill. And as we always do at Krug, we vinify plot by plot. And actually, Clos du Mesnil, despite very small, is bigger than the average plot. So every year we make 4 or 5 different vinifications within Clos du Mesnil. And in our blind tastings of still wine, we found that the wines from Clos du Mesnil always had a purity, kind of flintiness, as my grandfather used to say, that was not obvious elsewhere. And despite we bought in 71, it took 8 years until one day my dad said, you know, this ingredient, if I can keep it outside of Grand Cuvée, I would love to have it on its own, totally on its own. And my dad always told me about his own dad saying, you know, Henri, you cannot, because we are Krug. I mean, you are not going to produce a grower champagne at Krug. We are the opposite. A grower champagne is about the grapes in the garden, and Krug is about 3 types of grapes from all different villages and different years. You can't. And my dad said, you know, I'm doing an experiment because I would love to know what these wines alone could offer. And so he bottled 79, which he served to friends quite soon later, in 84, 85, he started to open bottle in blind tasting, and people said, but Henri, this is beautiful. You have to put it on the market. And my dad said, no, I can't, because we are Krug, we are about blending. Yes, but Henri, you are the only house that since ever has gone plot by plot. So you can explain that going plot by plot, testing these plots blind, you've discovered that one of them had such a quality that it could go on stage alone, almost like a soloist versus the orchestra. And this is the story of Krug Clos du Mesnil. And since you were talking about 2006, I crossed my finger 200 times now that I can jump in a plane not too late this year, come to New York, come to your marvelous tasting space in the store, and take you to this soloist, to the orchestra tasting, which is one of my beloved tastings. This is a tasting when, from the same year, we test Krug Clos du Mesnil, Krug Vintage, and Grand Cuvée. And I wish that we can have together, as soon as possible, Alice, Jamie, make it possible, please, as soon as possible, a tasting of Krug Clos du Mesnil 2006, Krug 2006, and the 162nd edition of Krug Grand Cuvée.
That sounds fantastic. So that means that 2006 Clos du Mesnil was produced and it will be on the market later this year.
It is somewhere on the sea. It's on its way.
Fantastic, fantastic. Back to vintage, because there's been a lot of chatter in the marketplace about the vintage and the fact that we might not see vintage Krug for quite some time. We're on 06, and then we're going to jump to, do we know what the next vintage release might be yet?
No, I have no idea. Who should I call? If Julie was with us, she would be very, very clear that there is one thing on which we are not, we don't speak too early at Krug, which is a release of the next champagnes. And why? Because we give the green light, the go, once we are 100% sure that these champagne are beautiful. So of course we taste a lot, and sometimes we even taste champagne 4, 5, 6 years before release just to have an idea. Renaud, I think you went to this last tasting, which I missed, and you taste the champagne, so you have an idea of what is coming in the next 5, 6 years. And we have this responsibility in front of you. But we will only validate what we have bottled sometimes 8, 10 years before, few months before release, once we are 100% sure that the dosage, the timing, etc., are precise. And some of you may remember that story of Krug Clodumene 99, which we last minute decided not to release, despite it was a great champagne. I was talking this morning in Australia. I was with a guy called Tyson Stelzer, who is I think in the top 5 of the champagne critics in the world. He's wrote fantastic books, and he said, this is one of the best Blanc de Blanc I've ever had in my life. And I still cannot, I know, when you know Clodumene, you know why Krug did not release, but I still cannot accept that this outstanding champagne had never been released. So this is as far as we go. And we are, some of you are in business, we were talking 12,000 bottles at the price you know. So this is how far we can go in terms of detail. There will never be a compromise for quality at Krug, whatever the cost.
You also have these beautiful cellars, and you introduced what is called the Krug collection. Can you explain what that is and how that parallels the decision to release a vintage and the timing aspect of when you release the collection?
Yes, so if you can hear me, where are you? Jeremy? Hello. I'm in your cellar. If Krug collection are the Krug vintages in their second life. So every time we have a Krug vintage, we do not disgorge a small part of it. And this will be disgorged 10, 15, 20 years later, when we in the tasting committee feel that this vintage has a rich, developed, new, more complex, deeper, richer aromas. And usually the market for Krug collection, I noticed, is more about people who missed the vintage when it was released. For example, not long ago, we had a Krug 1990, and I noticed that we sold or we allocated Krug 1990 mostly to people who were young, because they missed 1990 when 1990 was on the market. But the fun part, and I know some of you are doing it, is when you can go to a tasting when you have Krug 1990s, or today we are talking about 88 collection, the 88 bought on release and the 88 shipped a few months ago as collection. This is fun.
So that's an interesting point. You released the 88 collection after the 1990 collection.
Yes.
And that was just by the way the wine was showing, and you felt it wasn't ready for that second bow, yes, that second stage?
Yes. It was very long, and maybe you did not notice, or maybe you did, because sometimes maybe you are impatient, but to have the next Krug, especially 88, but it was really long to give birth to this collection. It has been in the pipe for a while, and Julie was very tough, and Julie has the last word. So this is a principle at Krug. She has the last word, and this must be protected forever. That as a chef de cave, you say yes or no. Ah, that looks nice.
It was really good. That we had that at La Fête de Champagne.
Cool.
It was fantastic. What makes the 88 vintage so unique? I mean, you had 3 spectacular vintages there: 88, 89, 90. But 88 is truly unique and special, and a favorite amongst Krug lovers by far.
I think it was a hero. In the old days, I would say this is one of the very first champagne that got outstanding ratings. And is an endless debate, but I'm not a big fan of rating because I think we are not making champagne we are not going to school. What is my rating? And so it's not my stuff. And most people do not look at ratings for champagne because they know the good stuff. And for example, for Krug vintages, they know that there is not a Krug vintage every year. And if you miss your chance, you will miss it and you have to buy it in 15 years when it is a collection. But this 88 was one of the first Krug, or maybe I would say the first champagne ever to get a very, very strong rating in many critics. That was the first time we got, even myself in my career, this was the first time I heard about ratings, you know, and I was working at Krug for more than 10 years already. So we were not talking about it at Krug. We don't look at that. I've never heard but suddenly people started to call, you got 99 points, 100 points, and maybe these were the early days of ratings. So it got a special exposure. Those who know Krug closely have probably heard my dad saying to few people that this might be not his best son, of course, but his best vintage. And this is something he told us at the end. He said, my best vintage might be 80, or not best, but my legendary vintage might be 88, but you will tell me because I won't know. So we will tell him one day.
No, I mean, it's marvelous. It's spectacular. It has such power and such richness. It's very unique.
It was a bit frustrating, not frustrating, but in terms of stock management for collection, because it was not moving. It was like zzz, not flat. But I mean, come on, you know, it's like someone who's not aging at all, you know, playing tennis the same way at the age of 60, and suddenly you say, come on, maybe you could run a little less fast. That was the 88, but finally we are here. But this richness is so delicate. Actually, I haven't had it for a while. I should check.
Does anybody have any other questions they'd like to pose to Olivier? I mean, since we have him now, I know he travels to US a good bit and travels the world, but this is a great opportunity to pose some questions and learn about Krug.
Hi, Olivier. Doug was here. I'm on Jeremy's team. I just want to go back to the beginning. You said that the Grand Cuvée is a blend of 190 wines. Is that correct?
This 168 edition is a blend of 198 wines.
98.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And
if I may, Douglas,
yes.
When people ask me for the proportion, I have a big smile. I say around 0.5% of each of the elements.
Okay. It's pretty extraordinary, really. And nobody else does that. I mean, that's in Champagne. No one really tries to.
I think what is interesting is maybe some people might have bigger number. I don't know. I would imagine that a house producing more bottles has probably more vats and different wines coming to the blend because of the size and the supply. But for sure, I feel that at Krug, we have decided why each of the 198 elements would come to the blend. And if you go back to the book, Eric has written in front of each of them why he selected this wine.
Right.
Again, as I said at the beginning, each wine is tested twice by at least 6 people. So each of the wines has 12 tasting notes. And if I may add, because I talk always a lot, when we talk about the 96, which is in this champagne,
right?
So we bottled this champagne in spring after the harvest 2012. So this was the 16th year when we had the 96 as a reserve. So the 96 received 12 tasting notes during 16 years. So we probably lost them because we used at that time to write everything. So we have books. We didn't lose them, but they are somewhere in the archives. But now with what we are doing with the iPad, in 15 years, when you ask me about the oldest reserve, I will be able to give you 15 years of with 12 different tasting every year. So I will come to you with 200 tasting notes over 15 years and tell you exactly why this reserve, etc.
Olivier, is
Hello.
there any chance we'll see a 2008?
I'm trying to torture Julie, but she still doesn't want to tell me. But there is a good rumor that yes. I made a bet on yes.
Olivier, can I ask you what the oldest, I mean, I don't know if this is top secret, but what is the oldest reserve wine in the cellars?
No, it is not secret. The oldest one is 2004.
Okay.
And we haven't touched it this year. Julie just finished the 175th edition of Grand Cuvée, and she went back to 2006. She had no need this year to use the oldest one, which is always good news, by the way.
Well, Olivier, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. Renaud, did he miss anything?
Be careful.
Thank you for asking the question, Jeremy. I love that question. No, but you know, what's fascinating with Olivier is that every time I learn something personally, and I'm blessed to be able to work with Olivier because obviously there is so much history and so many anecdotes that I would never be able to learn without Olivier. So no, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you all. I mean, and there's so much that we could go over, but we're basically closing in on that hour time, and I want everybody to be able to get out there and enjoy their Friday and start the weekend well. But I mean, you know, Krug has a fascinating website. What you do with the pairings with the different types of food elements based on the addition of the Grand Cuvée is wonderful. I find the music pairing very interesting and very unique that you do as well. And I know we didn't have a chance to talk on it here. I couldn't figure out how to stream the music for 168 during our conversation. Sorry, I'm new to Zoom. But, you know, those are all fascinating things that really kind of makes it unique. I mean, I know Grand Cuvée is special to the house and special to your heart, but I love the fact that there is a consistency to Grand Cuvée, but yet you can break down the differences between the different editions. And I've told you this before in the team at Krug. I think it's phenomenal now that you're putting the editions on there, so that people who really love Champagne and really love Krug can look and compare and contrast those ever slight differences between 168, 167, 166. I think it's a fascinating study and ability to kind of taste and compare what you produce.
Well, thank you
very much. So again, I jump in the first plane that can bring me back to New York. And my daughter was in New York the last 2 years, as some of you know. So some of you felt in a very unfair way that I was going to New York only for my daughter. So next time I can fly to New York, you will see I will be in New York the following day. So you will know that I'm also coming for you and to share Krug with you. We love you a lot. And what we will be doing, Jeremy, I want to take our friends through an experiment. Not an experiment, an experience that we offer a lot, which is to pair music and champagne. And while a lot of people think that pairing is only about food, because this is part of our industry, food and wine, food and champagne, music pairing is exactly the same process. So instead of asking a chef or sommelier to create dishes based on what is felt, we ask a musician to do so. And this is a lot of fun because we do it sometimes with people who have not even heard the name of Krug. You know, so what they will pick as music is entirely based on what they feel. And it's not difficult to guess that when I say freshness, elegance, I'm not talking about the same instrument or sound. as when I say richness, bold, and deep, you know. And so this is very interesting because these people offered us some little capsule of music that you will find on the Krug app. And despite it sounds a bit dogmatic, it is not. So it works. And when it doesn't work, it's because people don't want it to work. It works. It is proven scientifically that music changes one's taste perception. And you can do the experiment tonight. If you have a bottle to finish, you close your eyes, you have a sip of Grand Cuvée in silence, and you listen to Grand Cuvée as long as it goes. And if you close your eyes, you will feel even more when you get rid of one of these senses. And you will feel more finesse, more richness. It will last even longer. And then you have a second sip with music. And this will be endless. And then you will be convinced, and we will have this one of these great tastings. Thank you, Anna, Jeremy, Douglas for inviting me, Alice, Jamie for organizing this backstage. I'm missing you so much. Alice, I will see you in a few minutes, I believe. Dinner is served at Krug. Can I come?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. Anna, did we miss anything? Is there any last questions we have? No, we got them all. Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a great rest of your day, evening, and I hope you're drinking Krug. Take care.
And take care. We will we'll meet soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Bye. Merci. Au revoir.